So in terms of the briefing questions in the document that I've given you, this is in addition to the briefing sheet. Okay, there's 21 points on the briefing sheet. That's not what I'm talking about here. Yes, by all means, you must have that, and you will use that to go out and take your brief with your client. But in addition, there's these other questions that I would get you to consider, because sometimes we forget the most basic things. And I'll give you an example. Take asking about the product. What are we actually selling here? What are we actually promoting? And I've seen, this is a true story, when I was working for a very famous entrepreneur who managed famous people, and we had a speaking bureau and also the management bureau. And there was a client, I can't even say his name because I'll probably get sued. And it was a famous radio host, okay, and in Sydney. And there's a racing car driver with exactly the same name. And I wasn't actually part of this situation, but I was at the same desk where it all was happening. So I was able to oversee it. And I've never forgotten that clearly, because I'm telling now 30 years later. But they booked the radio host. No, sorry. The client wanted the racing car person, okay, famous racing car driver. But the brief was not taken correctly, and the radio host was booked, and the radio host got in a helicopter and flew to the event and was fronting up to the podium when they all realized, wrong guy. It went down to the wire before anyone realized it is the wrong person. So this can happen. And it can be small things, like, for example, just say you're working with Coke and you think you're promoting Diet Coke, the can, and the client thinks you're promoting Zero Coke, the can, right? Even that one small piece of data that gets missed out because there's an assumption made can absolutely waste so much time and effort and money, because the whole thing has to be done again, not to mention it's embarrassing, and also it shows a little lack of detail, etc. So these are not things you want to be conveying to the client. So things like, what are we actually creating here? You know, have we got clarity around the piece that we're making? Do we know the word count? Do we know the sizing? Do we know where this piece is going to be placed? So there's a whole raft of questions on that. And then you move into so you look at that before you go into your briefing. And while you're at the briefing, just make sure that those things are covered off. And then when you've written the copy, okay, before you send it to the client, go through this checklist. Things like, does it have a really catchy headline? And of course, this won't be relevant for everything that you do, but in general, does it have a problem embedded in the headline that you solve? Is there a benefit in the headline? Is an image needed? What is the call to action? Have we used you phrases? Why are you phrases, not we phrases? Is it written from the perspective of the reader? Have we looked at sentence length? You know, that's a really easy one to overlook, but it means that the sentences are all the same length, which means when it's read, it looks da-dum, 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 and it's really quite boring. It doesn't make people want to keep reading. Have you used some link phrases, you know, to keep things interesting, engaging, especially at the start of a sentence? Is there an offer? Have you tested the website, you know, that you've linked everything to, so that you ensure that when the client gets it and they click on that link, it's going to the right particular page? So all these things need to be considered. And if you can assess it before you send it, then you are more likely to feel confident, so that when the client does come back to you, maybe with some suggestions or some, you know, feedback, you at least have thought it through, and you've looked at all the obligations and combinations of what it could be, and you can come at them with from a position of confidence and belief that what you've written is the best that you could do at that time, and that's all you can ask for. And from there, you start taking on the changes from the client, which is another topic altogether. But at least you've sent it, it's out there, and you're halfway to being paid.